When I came back from my morning walk, the chair was gone. It wasn't just a chair, it was the chair. The one Ellen bought me for our 35th wedding anniversary. Brown leather, high back, smooth as butter in the winter sun, with a gentle recline that creaked just so when I leaned back. I'd sat in that chair every day since she passed, 1 part habit, 2 parts trying to stay close to her. Now it was gone. The corner where it lived next to the fireplace was empty, stripped clean like it had never been there at all. I stood frozen in the doorway, muddy shoes forgotten on the welcome mat. The television was on, low volume, the morning news flickering across the screen. And where my chair had been, just an accent table. The kind you buy because a decorator says you need balance in the room. My son-in-law, David, breezed in from the hallway, smelling of cologne and something expensive I couldn't name. "Oh, hey. You're back. Looks better, doesn't it?" He gestured at the space like a magician revealing a vanishing trick. I stared at the empty corner. "Where's my chair?" My voice came out thinner than I meant. He blinked. "Oh. That thing? We had the Salvation Army pick it up this morning. It was falling apart, man. Falling apart." I opened my mouth but nothing came out. My heart was thudding, slow and hard like it had when I buried Ellen, when I folded her nightgown and placed it in a drawer I haven't opened since. "It was still good," I said, trying to sound calm. David shrugged. "It didn't go with the new rug. Plus, it smelled kind of musty. Claire's been sneezing lately." Claire. My daughter. My only child. She hadn't mentioned sneezing. She hadn't mentioned my chair, either. I walked into the living room, shoes still on, leaving faint tracks on their new designer rug. I stood in the corner where my chair used to be, the sun from the bay window now landing on a pot of white orchids. "You could have asked me," I said, softer this time. David exhaled, the way people do when they want the conversation to be over. "Come on, Frank. You've still got the one in the den." The one in the den. A straight-back wooden chair meant for short conversations and unpaid bills. The one no one ever sat in unless they had to. "I'll be in my room," I said. He gave me a nod like he'd done something noble, like he'd improved my life by simplifying it. I walked down the hallway to my bedroom. Shut the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. My hands rested on my knees, palms open, like I was still holding the armrests that weren't there. I didn't say anything to Claire when she came home later. She hugged me, asked if I'd had a good walk, told me they were thinking of repainting the kitchen a brighter color. I nodded. Smiled. Said it sounded nice. But inside, something shifted. Something that had been holding on, quiet, obedient, grateful, loosened. I wasn't angry, not yet. Just, aware. Aware that I was no longer seen as a man, but as a piece of furniture myself. Something to be moved, covered, or removed. And just like that, the war began. Silently. With one missing chair. I met Ellen at a bus stop in the fall of 1974. She was reading Wuthering Heights, coat too thin for the weather, lips pressed tight against the wind. I offered her my scarf, and she took it with a look that said, "I don't need it, but thank you anyway." That look, half pride, half grace, stayed with her all her life. We built our life slowly, brick by brick. I worked in carpentry, then home renovations. Ellen taught second grade. We didn't have much, but we always had enough for one another. Our daughter Claire was born 7 years into our marriage, after 2 miscarriages and a season of silence that nearly broke us. Ellen used to say Claire was made of prayer and second chances. We bought a small house in Maplewood when Claire was 5, yellow siding, sagging porch, chimney that needed remortaring every 3rd winter. But it was home. I fixed what I could, learned from books, YouTube tutorials, neighbors. Ellen made the inside beautiful, lace curtains, soft quilts, the smell of cinnamon in every room come October. We never traveled far. Never needed to. Sunday drives and Wednesday night meatloaf were enough. We had each other, and Claire, and the kind of life that feels small on paper but enormous when you're living it. I put Claire through college with overtime shifts and calloused hands. We remortgaged twice. Ellen went back to work part-time, even though her arthritis had started creeping in. I never heard her complain. "It's for Claire," she'd say, rubbing Tiger Balm into her knuckles. Claire married David 3 years after graduation. He was smooth, successful, the kind of man who made Ellen squeeze my hand under the table whenever he started talking about wine or stocks. He wasn't a bad man. Just the kind who saw the world in rankings and returns. They moved to a better zip code. Had a boy, then a girl. I built them a crib. Ellen sewed baby blankets. Every Friday we drive an hour to see them, groceries and toys in the trunk. When Ellen got sick, it was quick. Too quick. Pancreatic cancer doesn't linger. She was gone in 4 months. Claire took me in afterward. "You shouldn't be alone, Dad," she said, and I believed her. I didn't know how to be anything but grateful. They gave me the guest room downstairs. Claire decorated it like a hotel suite, neutral tones, clean lines, barely a trace of anything that looked like me. I brought the chair, of course. Ellen's chair, my chair. Set it by the fireplace and watched the world shrink to routines and polite boundaries. They were kind, in the way people are when they think kindness is enough. Dinners at 6. Thermostat set too cold. My opinions asked but never heard. The kids called me Grandpa when it was convenient, and Frank when their friends were over. I didn't complain. I remembered Ellen's voice, gentle even near the end, "Be gracious, Frank. Give people room to love you the way they can." So I was gracious. I said thank you when they brought me lukewarm tea. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I turned the volume down on the TV even when the news anchor's voice blurred. But in the quiet of the evenings, in that chair, I remembered the smell of Ellen's lemon hand cream, the way she'd hum to herself when making tea, the soft tap of her fingers on the armrest when she was deep in thought. I held on to that chair like it was the last bridge between who I'd been and what I was becoming, a ghost in someone else's home. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and pretend I was back in our old living room, Ellen reading by the fire, Claire doing homework on the rug. Back when I was needed, when I was seen. Before I became a shadow. So when that chair disappeared without a word, not broken, not damaged, just inconvenient, I knew something more had been taken. Not just comfort. Not just memory. But permission. Permission to take up space. And I wondered, sitting on the stiff bed that night, if Ellen would still ask me to be gracious. Because I was starting to think grace had an expiration date. It started with the chair, but it didn't end there. A few days after it vanished, I found my bookshelf cleared. Ellen's photo was gone from the mantel. In its place, a sleek abstract sculpture, the kind that looks expensive but means nothing. When I asked Claire about the photo, she smiled too brightly and said, "Oh, we're just streamlining the look in here. I put your things in the hall closet." My things. I opened the closet to find a cardboard box. Inside, Ellen's photo in its brass frame, my worn Bible, the little wooden duck Claire made in 6th grade that Ellen refused to throw away. Tucked in the corner was the folded American flag from my brother's funeral. All packed away. Like leftovers. I tried to tell myself it wasn't meant to hurt. Maybe Claire didn't think of it as erasure. Maybe she thought she was helping. Making things lighter. But the weight inside me said otherwise. That Sunday, during dinner, David mentioned they were considering converting the guest room into a home office. "We figured it might be better for your knees to have a room upstairs," he said, cutting into his steak. Claire nodded. "There's that space in the attic. We could add insulation, make it cozy." They spoke like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. Like I was a piece of furniture being rearranged. I cleared my throat. I like being downstairs. Claire smiled like a nurse talking to a patient. We just want what's best for you, Dad. That night I climbed the attic stairs just to see it for myself. The air was stale, dry. A single bulb hung from the ceiling. The slanted roof made it impossible to stand straight. A cot would fit. Maybe a chair. But not much else. I didn't say anything more. Just nodded when they brought it up again 2 nights later. By Friday, they'd ordered a contractor for a quote. I started noticing how they introduced me to guests. This is my dad, Frank. He's staying with us for now. For now. Like I was a visiting tenant. At Claire's birthday dinner, someone asked me how I liked retirement. Before I could answer, Claire said, "Oh, he's adjusting. It's just hard sometimes. You know, when people get older, they get set in their ways." She said it with a chuckle, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. The room laughed politely. I smiled, but I didn't taste a bite of my food after that. I overheard David on the phone one afternoon. "We're hoping to list it as a 2-bedroom plus office. It'll add resale value. He's old school, but I think he'll adapt. Doesn't need much space." He was talking to a realtor. About my room. That night, I asked Claire what was going on. She sighed. "Dad, we're not kicking you out. But you have to understand, this is our home. You're part of it, of course, but we have to think about the future too." I nodded slowly. Of course. The next day, my truck keys were missing from the key rack. I found them in the kitchen drawer under the dish towels. When I asked about it, Claire looked confused. "I just didn't want the grandkids accidentally grabbing them," she said. "You hardly drive anymore." I started noticing other things disappearing. My notepad from the coffee table. My favorite mug. My slippers, replaced with new ones that pinched. The mail started going straight to David. "You don't need to worry about the paperwork, Frank," he said. "We'll take care of all that now." That was the moment I realized something else. They weren't just clearing out my belongings. They were clearing out me. Not violently. Not cruelly. But with polite, well-meaning efficiency. And every time I asked a question or hesitated, they smiled. That awful, serene, practiced smile. The one that says, "We love you, but we've already made the decision." I wasn't their guest anymore. I was their project. They called it help. They called it care. But it felt like I was being folded away. Like a favorite quilt you don't want to throw out but no longer have space for. Claire meant well. I kept telling myself that. She thought she was protecting me. She thought she was taking care of her aging father. But she never once asked what I wanted. And the deeper truth settled in me slowly, like sediment at the bottom of a glass. She didn't see me as a man anymore. Just someone to manage. And that realization hurt more than the chair, more than the room, more than the box in the closet. Because it meant I was invisible to the one person who used to look at me like I was the center of her world. The attic room was ready in 3 weeks. They painted it sage green, Ellen's favorite color, though I don't think Claire remembered that. They put in a new mattress, a small writing desk, a lamp too dim for reading. The ceiling sloped low on one side, just enough to remind me that the world was shrinking around me. When I moved in, Claire called it a fresh start. David called it cozy. I said nothing. I took my clothes, my box of folded memories, and the one framed photo of Ellen they hadn't packed away, and climbed the stairs like I was boarding a ship I hadn't bought a ticket for. The first night in that attic, I lay awake long after the house fell silent. The walls creaked in the way old homes do, like they're trying to remember what they once were. I could hear laughter from downstairs, David's voice, Claire's, the kids watching a movie. I used to be part of those sounds. Now I was above them. Apart. Like insulation. The air smelled of new paint and dust. I missed the scent of cinnamon. I missed Ellen's voice. I missed the feel of carpet underfoot, the way she'd hum while folding laundry. I missed myself. In the attic, there was no chair. Just the mattress, a blanket too thin for winter, and a narrow window with a view of the neighbor's roof. Each morning I came down for breakfast and found things already started, eggs cooked, toast buttered, coffee poured into a mug I didn't recognize. I offered to help, and Claire waved me off with that same smile. "We've got it, Dad. Just relax." So I relaxed. I relaxed while they installed a keypad lock on the garage, for security. I relaxed when my prescriptions were switched to auto-refill without my say. I relaxed when David canceled my old newspaper subscription because we read everything online now. I relaxed until I didn't recognize my own days anymore. One morning, I opened my wallet and found Ellen's note was missing. She'd written it on the back of a shopping list, years ago. "Frank, if you ever forget who you are, remember, you are loved. You are mine." It was creased and worn, tucked behind my driver's license for over 2 decades. I checked every pocket, drawer, shelf. Nothing. I asked Claire if she'd seen it. She said no. Maybe I'd misplaced it. "Why would I touch your wallet?" she asked. I didn't answer. Because I was afraid to. That night, I stayed in the attic long after the sun had gone down. I didn't turn on the light. Just sat by the small window and watched the wind move through the trees, feeling like one of them, bare, brittle, ready to fall. I thought about the man I used to be. A man who built kitchens with his own hands. Who could read blueprints like novels. Who held his wife's hand through chemotherapy and never once let her see him cry. Now I was the man who needed things explained. Who was asked 3 times a day if he'd taken his meds. Who couldn't even choose the mug he drank from. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was tired. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I started going on longer walks. Left before the house woke up. Returned when the porch lights were on. Claire said she worried, asked me to carry a phone. I nodded, pocketed the old flip phone they gave me, and left it on silent most days. I'd sit on the bench near the duck pond Ellen used to love. Watch people jog past. Young couples pushing strollers. Teenagers shouting into phones. Nobody saw me. Not really. And slowly, I started to disappear from myself too. I ate what they gave me. Laughed when they needed me to. Answered questions like a guest at dinner. Smiled in family photos. But inside, I was retreating. To memories. To silence. To the last place I was loved without conditions. I found myself spending whole afternoons thinking about that chair. How it molded to my body. How it groaned when I shifted, like it knew me. How it anchored me when nothing else could. It wasn't about the chair, I knew that. It was about what they were willing to take. Without asking. Without apology. And what I was letting them take. Because somehow, somewhere along the way, I had agreed, quietly, unconsciously, that I no longer mattered. That their lives were more important than my presence in them. That my role was to disappear without making a scene. But as I stared out that attic window night after night, something began to harden inside me. A shape. A thought. A presence. Not anger. Not yet. Just the faint stirring of something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. The ache of a man who used to be proud. And the whisper of the man he used to be, asking. Are you just going to sit there and let them finish what they started? It started with a notebook. Not one of those expensive journals with leather covers and ribbon bookmarks. Just a plain, spiral-bound pad from the dollar store near the park. Blue lines, wide rule, slightly crooked margins. I bought it one morning on my walk. Paid cash. Slipped it into my coat pocket like it was something secret. Because it was. That night, I sat at the little desk in the attic, elbows tucked in so I wouldn't bump the angled wall, and wrote one word at the top of the page. Date. Then underneath, what they moved today. That first entry was small. Coffee jar replaced. New brand. No one asked if I liked it. The next day, my slippers gone from under the bench. New ones placed. Size smaller. Then, garage code changed. No notice. I didn't show anyone the notebook. I didn't tell Claire. I just kept writing. Each entry small, ordinary, harmless in isolation. But together, they formed a story, a slow, methodical disappearance. Of autonomy. Of voice. Of identity. And with each line, the fog inside me began to clear. I started paying attention. Noticing patterns. Every time they moved something of mine, they smiled bigger. Every time I objected, their voices softened. It's for your own good, Dad. We're just simplifying things, Frank. Simple. It was all so simple for them. So I began to simplify something for myself, my future. One morning, while David was at work and Claire was driving the kids to school, I logged into my bank account from the attic laptop I'd bought during my lunch breaks before retirement. Password still worked. Security question: what was your first car? Dodge Dart. I checked the balance of the joint account Claire had set up to help manage bills. $42,731. That was my money. Pension deposits. Social Security. Leftover savings. I clicked Download Statements and saved 3 years' worth of PDFs to a flash drive I kept in my sock drawer. Next, I checked the house deed. The title search service cost me $39 and 2 hours at the public library, but it confirmed what I suspected: the house was in Claire and David's name. No mention of me, even though I'd paid for the down payment. Quietly. Proudly. Stupidly. I printed the documents. Added them to a new manila folder. Labeled it, Holdings. After that, I spent afternoons researching elder law. Turns out, for your own good isn't a legal defense when someone has financial control of your life without consent. I scheduled a consultation with a local attorney named Sylvia who specialized in elder abuse and estate restoration. She offered a free 45-minute meeting. I didn't tell Claire where I was going that Tuesday. Said I had a dental cleaning. Walked the extra 5 blocks to her office so I wouldn't leave a GPS trail. Sylvia was younger than I expected. Maybe late 30s. Smart eyes. No nonsense. I just want to understand my options, I told her, sliding the folder across her desk. She leafed through it slowly. Paused at the joint account statements. Marked a few numbers. Her face didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Mr. Porter, she said, have you given your daughter power of attorney? No, I said. Have you authorized her to manage your finances? Not officially. I gave her online access a few years ago when Ellen passed. I thought it would make things easier. She nodded slowly. It did. For her. I looked at my hands in my lap. I'm not trying to start a war. Good, she said, tapping the folder. Because you've already been drafted. You just haven't fired back yet. I walked out of her office with a new folder, a list of action items, and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. Back in the attic, I made a new plan. Wrote it out in careful block letters like blueprints. 1. Separate my income. 2. Open a new P.O. box. 3. Contact bank about access restrictions. 4. Write a letter to the grandkids. That last one was the hardest. I knew Claire might twist the story. Tell them Grandpa was confused. Grandpa was unwell. But I wanted them to have one honest letter. So I told them about Ellen. About the garden we planted. About the chair. I didn't blame anyone. I just told the truth. That sometimes, when people love you, they stop seeing you clearly. And if you let them, they'll shrink you down to what's convenient. I signed the letter and placed a copy in my sock drawer next to the flash drive. Then I took out my wallet and removed every card connected to the joint account. Replaced them with new ones I'd ordered under a different bank. Used my old work address as the contact. Finally, I walked down to the living room late one evening. Everyone was asleep. I stood in the spot where my chair used to be. The corner was empty again. Claire had moved the accent table somewhere else. There was no fire in the fireplace. Just dust and a faint shadow of what used to be comfort. I reached down and touched the floor. Still creaked in the same spot. Still remembered. Just like I did. When I returned to the attic that night, I didn't feel erased. I felt prepared. Not angry. Not spiteful. Just ready. Because if they were going to keep rearranging me like furniture, then they were about to learn what happened when the furniture pushed back. The first thing I did was stop cooking. Every Saturday, for the past 2 years, I made breakfast. Pancakes with cinnamon, just the way Claire liked them as a girl. Bacon extra crispy, the way David always requested. Fresh fruit, sliced with care. The grandkids called it Grandpa's Cafe. So that Saturday, I stayed upstairs. Claire knocked around 9. "Dad? Are you coming down?" "I'm not feeling up to it," I said through the door. "Oh. Okay, we'll save you something." They didn't. The next week, same thing. Then the week after that. By the 4th Saturday, no one knocked. I started forgetting to leave the porch light on. Stopped reminding David about the trash bins on Tuesday nights. Let the hedge grow a little wild. Small things. Things I used to do invisibly, out of habit, out of care. Then I made the first transfer. I moved $18,000 out of the joint account. Not all at once. Just small amounts, $3,000 here, $2,500 there, into the new account Sylvia helped me open. She taught me to flag each transfer as personal emergency allocation. Legal. Quiet. Undetectable unless someone was watching very closely. No one was. Claire still thought I couldn't remember what day it was. David assumed my silence meant agreement. Neither of them knew I was reading everything. Monitoring their shared finances. Watching how the mortgage was set to auto-pay on the 15th. How the credit card balance rose in December and didn't fall until March. They didn't notice when their monthly budgets suddenly tightened. When the restaurant dinners became takeout. When the new patio furniture went back into the cart instead of the checkout. I just smiled when they mentioned cutbacks. "I'm sure it'll pass," I said, buttering toast. I rerouted my pension to the new account. Then my Social Security. I changed the billing address to the P.O. box downtown and set up a forwarding service to collect my statements. Claire noticed after a few weeks. "Dad, I think the pension office made a mistake. Your deposit didn't hit this month." "I'll call and check," I said. I didn't. David asked me one morning, coffee mug in hand, "Do you know if we've still got that gas card? The one we used for Costco runs?" "No idea," I said, flipping through the paper. "Maybe check the kitchen drawer." It was gone, of course. I'd cancelled it 2 weeks prior. Quietly. Without fanfare. In March, the insurance company called. They asked if I still wanted the car policy bundled with Claire and David's vehicles. "I think it's time we separated things," I said. "We live different lives now." They agreed. Claire noticed the premium increase on their end and asked about it. I shrugged. Maybe rates went up. She frowned, but didn't press. At Sylvia's suggestion, I wrote a formal letter rescinding any verbal financial permissions I'd given Claire. We had it notarized and sent it by certified mail. 3 weeks later, she received it. She didn't say anything. But I noticed she stopped asking if I needed help paying for my prescriptions. I found a local CPA, a kind older woman named Janine, and had my taxes filed separately for the first time in 8 years. I claimed every deduction. Tracked every transfer. Left a paper trail 10 feet wide. No more hiding. Then, I started emptying the house. Not visibly. Not all at once. But slowly, deliberately, like sweeping dust from a floor. Ellen's photo came back upstairs. My old watch, the one Claire said looked too worn, reappeared on my wrist. I took back the tools from the garage David said were too dangerous and locked them in a trunk beneath my bed. I reclaimed my name at the pharmacy, the bank, the dentist's office. No, not under Claire Porter, I said. Franklin W. Porter. I have my own records now. I began spending 2 days a week at the community center. Sylvia connected me with a seniors legal advocacy group. They needed someone with a steady hand and a quiet voice to help with paperwork. I helped 4 people draft wills. 3 file formal complaints. And 1 sweet widow move out of her daughter's basement. I never told Claire. She thought I was at the library. At dinner one Thursday, she mentioned something about her new wellness app. It tracks your heart rate, hydration, even mood patterns. You should try it, Dad. I looked at her across the table and smiled. I've been tracking things my own way lately. She didn't understand what I meant. David did. For half a second, his eyes narrowed. Then the smile returned. I was becoming inconvenient again. One day, I overheard Claire on the phone in the kitchen. No, he hasn't said anything, but he's been different. Withdrawn. I think he's confused about the bills. Maybe we should start looking into some options. Assisted care, just in case. She said, just in case, but I knew the tone. I'd used it myself before Ellen passed. The tone of someone who has already decided. So I made my final quiet move. I found a place. A 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. 2nd floor. Sunny windows. Utilities included. The rent wasn't cheap, but with my own money, it was manageable. I signed the lease under my full name. Move-in date, April 3rd, 30 days notice. Quiet and polite. No argument. No fight. Just a single page, left on the kitchen counter one evening. Dear Claire and David. Thank you for your hospitality. It's time I had a space of my own again. I'll be gone by April 3rd. Please don't try to talk me out of it. Dad. Underneath, I placed the notebook. Open to the first page. The day I moved out, no one was home. I loaded my boxes into the back of a cab, a few clothes, my tools, Ellen's photo, my files. The driver didn't ask questions. I handed him a $20 tip before we left the driveway. The house looked smaller in the rearview mirror. Pale and new, like it didn't recognize me anymore. I didn't look back. The apartment was clean, quiet, and smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant. 2 windows. A kitchenette. A chair I chose myself. The first night, I slept better than I had in a year. Claire texted the next morning. You didn't say goodbye. I didn't reply. She called that afternoon. Dad, we need to talk. Please call me. I didn't. Instead, I forwarded the utilities to their name. Disconnected the auto payments from my old account. The next week, their water bill bounced. David called. Left a voicemail. Hey Frank, we're seeing some issues with the joint account. Thought you should know. I didn't respond. By week 2, Claire came to the community center. She stood in the doorway, scanning for me. I saw her before she saw me. She looked smaller than I remembered. I didn't wave. I let her leave without saying anything. That night, another text. I don't understand what's happening. She understood. She just didn't want to admit it. By week 3, David sent an email. Formal. Tight. We need access to those financial records. The mortgage is past due. If you could send the login or, whatever you're doing, please stop. I deleted it. I heard from a neighbor that David had gone to the bank to ask questions. They told him the account was closed. By April 15th, their credit card was declined at a dinner party. A mutual friend called me to ask if everything was okay. Seems they're having a rough patch, I said, sipping tea in my new chair. But they're resilient. I'm sure they'll adapt. Claire called again that night. This time, she didn't leave a voicemail. I could imagine her sitting in the living room, surrounded by unpaid bills, wondering how the man they thought needed managing had slipped through their fingers like sand. She texted again. Was it really about the chair? I read it twice. Then 3 times. And I realized, yes, it started there. But it was about so much more. It was about being erased by the people I loved most. It was about the photo taken off the mantle. The lock changed on the garage. The way they said, Frank, instead of, Dad, when guests were over. It was about the soft, polite condescension that seeped into every interaction. The assumption that getting old meant becoming small. Quiet. Disposable. And it was about taking that narrative back. Bit by quiet bit. The final consequence came a week later. Claire showed up at the apartment. I watched from the second-floor window as she stood on the sidewalk, looking up, holding a box. Probably cookies. Maybe a photo frame. Peace offering or guilt souvenir, I couldn't tell. I didn't go down. She didn't buzz. After 10 minutes, she walked away. And for the first time, I realized. I wasn't sad. Not bitter. Not angry. Just free. In their house, I'd been a fixture. Something useful, until it wasn't. Here, in this space I chose, with this chair I bought, with this silence I earned. I was a man again. They would survive. I knew that. They'd tighten their belts. Cut corners. Refinance if they had to. But they would never again call me confused. They would never again mistake my silence for permission. And they would never again assume that being quiet meant being powerless. I watched the trees sway outside my window, light catching in the glass just right. Ellen would have laughed. A soft, surprised laugh, the kind she gave when something quiet turned out stronger than expected. I poured myself a cup of tea. Sat in my chair. And listened to the peace they used to call stillness. It was a Sunday when Claire finally came up. I was sitting by the window with the newspaper folded in my lap, a cup of tea cooling on the side table. The knock was soft, 3 careful taps on the apartment door. I let it sit. She knocked again. Then, Dad. It's me. I opened the door slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not in stature, just, quieter. She held a Tupperware container like a peace treaty. Hi, she said. I nodded. Claire. We stood in silence for a moment. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked in carefully, like the apartment might reject her. I watched her take it in, the simple furniture, the sunlight on the hardwood floor, the chair by the window. She set the container on the counter. Beef stew, she said. Your favorite. Ellen's recipe. Her eyes flicked up. Close. I nodded once. Thanks. She sat on the edge of the couch. I stayed standing. Dad, she started, then faltered. I don't know where to begin. Try the truth, I said. She looked up at me. Her face was pale. There were lines she didn't have a year ago. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. Neither did David. We just thought. I know what you thought. That stopped her. She waited. You thought I was losing track, I said calmly. That I needed managing. Editing. Reducing. Her hands clenched in her lap. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said, my voice soft but steady. You moved my things. Decided what I needed. Smiled while you erased me. She flinched. I thought I was helping. You weren't. The silence sat heavy between us. I made mistakes, she said, voice catching. I see that now. But you shut me out. You just left. I didn't leave, I said. I reclaimed. She looked confused. I didn't walk out of your life. I walked back into mine. Her eyes welled, but she blinked it back. You could have talked to me. I tried, I said. You didn't hear. I'm hearing now, she said. I let that sit for a while. She looked around again. Her eyes landed on the photo of Ellen on the shelf. Mom would have been heartbroken to see us like this. No, I said. She would have been proud. Claire's face twisted. Of what? You cutting us off. Watching us struggle. Of me finally respecting myself. The words landed like stone in water, rippling, sinking. I took care of you your whole life, I said. I carried you. Built your crib. Paid your tuition. Covered your mortgage. I gave without asking, because that's what fathers do. I know. No, you don't. Her lips pressed together. You stopped seeing me as a person, I said. Started treating me like a liability. Like something fragile. Breakable. Tears welled again, this time slipping over. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I believed her. But it didn't change the truth. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm not coming back. She nodded slowly. I don't need to be managed, I said. I need to be respected. You have it, she said. Now. You have it. Good, I said. Then we can talk, on those terms. She looked up. Does that mean? It means I'll visit. A pause. But I won't move back. I won't be your tenant, your patient, or your guilt project. She exhaled. A small, sad sound. Then nodded. I miss you, she said. I miss you too, I replied. But I don't miss the version of me you tried to replace. She stood slowly. Wiped her eyes. Walked to the door. Hand on the handle, she turned back. Can I bring the kids next Sunday? Just bring yourself first, I said. Let's start there. She nodded. Okay. Then she left. I closed the door gently. The apartment was quiet again. Peaceful. But this time, the peace wasn't about absence. It was about balance. The world had tilted back to where it belonged. And I was sitting squarely at its center. The next morning, I opened the windows wide. The air was cool, the kind of crisp that bites gently at your skin before the day warms up. The smell of pavement, early coffee from the cafe downstairs, and spring dust stirred something quiet inside me. I brewed a cup of tea. No one told me which mug to use. No one asked if I needed help pouring it. The days found a rhythm, slow but full. Mornings at the community center, afternoons reading in the sun. I fixed a broken chair for the librarian across the street. Repaired a loose gate hinge for the woman with the tabby cat on the third floor. My hands remembered what they were built for. I bought a new chair. Leather. High back. The kind that fits you over time. It wasn't the same as Ellen's, but it didn't need to be. It didn't carry her scent or the ghost of her voice, but it did carry something new, choice. Agency. A return to myself. The walls of the apartment slowly grew warmer. I hung 2 pictures, a photo of Claire at age 10 holding a muddy frog with a grin so wide it hurt to look at, and one of Ellen laughing, head thrown back, caught in mid-story. I started a garden box on the balcony. Tomatoes. Basil. Marigolds. Ellen would have teased me, "You were never the patient one, Frank." But I was learning. Letting things grow in their own time. Claire called every Sunday now. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes I let it ring. Not to punish, just to breathe. On the days we did talk, the conversations were different. No soft tones, no syrupy pity. Just 2 adults speaking plainly, learning each other again. She stopped calling me Daddy and started calling me Dad. I didn't know why, but it felt honest. Grounded. David never called. That was fine. The kid sent me drawings in the mail, crayon rockets, uneven hearts, a stick figure labeled Grandpa, with a beard longer than I'd ever grown. I pinned them on the fridge. In June, I took the bus to the old neighborhood. The house had new shutters. Someone had painted the porch. The tree Ellen planted in '82 was still there, taller than ever. I stood across the street for a while, watching the wind move through its leaves. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I felt something else. Gratitude. For the years we had. For the fact that love, real love, doesn't disappear, it settles in the bones. Later that summer, Claire came by. Alone this time. We sat on the balcony and drank iced tea. She looked at the marigolds. Mom would have liked those. She did, I said. Used to plant them by the mailbox every year. Claire looked down, thumb tracing the rim of her glass. I read the notebook. I nodded. I didn't know how far we'd pushed you, she said. I'm sorry. I know. A pause. Then, softly, can I come again? Just to talk. I didn't answer right away. Then I looked at her, not the daughter I'd lost, but the woman who was trying. Bring the frog photo next time, I said. I want to tell you the story behind it. She smiled, eyes shining. Okay. After she left, I sat in the new chair. Watched the sun stretch long across the floorboards. I wasn't lonely. Not anymore. I had myself again. And somehow, that was enough. More than enough. Sometimes I sit in the quiet and close my eyes, not to remember what was taken, but to feel what's returned. My breath. My voice. My name. There's no applause for a man who reclaims himself in silence. No trophies for dignity. No headlines for stillness. But in this room, with this light and this chair. Chosen, not given. There is something better than recognition. There is rest. And in that rest, I am whole again. Not because they changed. But because I did. Because I stopped waiting to be seen. And stood up without making a sound.